Could you speak to some of the biggest challenges that you have faced during your career?
Well, talking earlier on, I think the first major challenge I had was when I was transferred from this organization I was working in, which was basically, it had evolved. I had a job where I was working with retirees and employees on environmental projects and putting out all kinds of literature about that for anybody who would listen. Some people. But ultimately I got transferred into media relations, which is the beginning of a public relations career, and for many very excellent people, the fulfillment of a public relations career. But I knew nothing about media relations. I mean nothing. And I tried to learn. At that time, I was the only woman in that part of the group. And everybody else had been a journalist. And I hadn't been a journalist either, so I was terrified. And ultimately, I thought I would fail, and my boss said he really started to worry about me, that I was paralyzed. And ultimately, I decided that one of AT&T's problems was that because they were staffed by print journalists, they had no television public relations at all. And so I created a television approach and a little group, and hired a television specialist and started getting us on things like the Today Show and what have you. And of course there were 10 million stories that were ready to be told because we had never done anything proactively for television. And that was sort of the beginning of finding that one of the real ways to make a difference in a large organization was to create as opposed to follow the well-beaten path. And of course, between the years of the 70s, the late 70s, the early 80s, when AT&T was broken up, and from then on, it was all about adapting to change, all about adapting to a new world. And so anyone who was not complaining about the way it was, but was ready to say, whoa, there's opportunity here to do something new, I think was more valuable. And that was the biggest challenge for me, was finding those ways. Later on, when I was in charge, the very, very largest challenges were, on the one hand, trying to help senior management adapt to the various things that those of us who have a broad view of the world could see needed to be done, other than the technical and financial aspects of the business. But we got into trouble, not often, but sometimes. And I think the most difficult times I had to overcome were two catastrophic events I was involved in. One, when our foundation, for a variety of reasons I won't bore you with now, decided to stop funding Planned Parenthood. And within a couple of weeks, our wonderful relationship with this organization, which had gone on for 16 years, we were their longest funder, turned into a cataclysmic public battle with Planned Parenthood nationally, taking ads saying hang up on AT&T. We had threats of boycott. It was just horrible, absolutely horrible. And worse, because those of us who had managed this decision were quite sympathetic to it, but for a variety of reasons having to do with the company policy and their policies, were unable to do this through our foundation. But the thing I learned was that there are public issues that are so big, so divisive, so potent, so emotional, so like tornadoes, that it doesn't matter how big and powerful you are as a business or an institution. It doesn't matter whether or not right is on your side. It doesn't matter whether you've planned well. You step into one of these issues, and you are like a little rowboat in a raging sea, because the big national, public, cultural, emotional, patriotic, religious kinds of issues just cut you to pieces, and you bleed everywhere. And I learned, because I fell into another one maybe 10 years later, I learned that these were to be fudged, if possible, in such a way that you would not become a target, and that if you were going to have to deal with one of these issues, you needed to develop not just good constituency relations, which we had, but you needed to understand strategy in a very real way, and company character, and issues management at a very, very high level, or the reputational implications were just awful. We had, for 10 years following this decision, we had proxy statements regarding the funding of this organization. I mean, it was just so beyond belief. So there are crises and there are crises. And I learned a lot about crisis management through the course of our career, because God knows we had plenty of them.
During the course of your career, what are the most significant changes that you've observed in the practice of public relations?
I think the most obvious is that today everybody knows everything. And beyond transparency, the participation of everybody in commenting on what you do, whether it's employees on public message boards, whether it's consumer-created content commenting on your brand, whether it's leaks, whether it's emails, I mean, whatever it is, there used to be some ability to manage information. I think that's very, very rare today. And so that's the challenge of how you convey what you're doing in a way that is effective with the people you want to reach, given all the noise and all the comment and all the transparency. I think that's huge. Second thing is, everything happens so fast today. I'm on the board of Columbia University, which is always in the news. And it's so hard for the president of the university to be able to even go on record about various and sundry things that are happening, because almost before he's sure of what happened, it's in all the media everywhere. And you know, you work so hard to present some kind of coherent view, particularly of decentralized enterprises, and it's very, very difficult. So I think those are two big ones. Of course, the technology change is overwhelming, but that shows itself, I think, in speed and ubiquity of the way information gets out. The third major change is of course globalization, and the need, particularly now going forward, to understand the changing role of our country and our businesses in the world. I'm not sure we're ready for the kind of competition that's ahead. I'm not sure we're ready for understanding that in areas that we operate outside this country, that we face a very different kind of environment, and how we succeed in that environment, both financially and with attracting employees. I'm not sure we have our arms around the issue of how consistent a company culture needs to be, but given this very rapid news cycle, given this ubiquity of comments on what you do, given all these people who are talking about you that you don't know about, if something happens in Africa, it can be just as relevant as if it happens in Manhattan. And so I think those three forces, speed, the fact that everybody knows what you're doing all the time, and globalization are probably the three, off the top of my head, the three biggest changes in the business.
What do you feel is the future of the public relations industry? How do you think that the industry is evolving now with everything that you've talked about in terms of technology and the global economy? What's the future for the public relations industry?
I think it is just hitting its stride. I really do. I think the changes we're seeing in the business world, in technology and globalization, speak to why institutions need public relations. Institutions are struggling to deal with these rapidly multiplying constituencies. They are struggling to deal with the fact that everybody knows everything about them. They are struggling to understand how to fit into a multicultural world, and by that I mean globally, as well as the tremendous demographic change here. This is what we do. This is what we bring to the table. So I think as I look at what some of the agencies are doing in terms of developing new mechanisms for understanding how to use the new tools, how to deal with the transparency, as I look at the expertise we've developed in crisis planning, when people fall into crises every Tuesday and Thursday nowadays because of the way media works, when I look at the explosion, the fragmentation of media and citizen journalism and what have you, and blogging, when I look at the skills we're developing and how to measure the impact of what we do and reputation, hey, we're about to be in the golden age. The past was truly just prelude.